Hey YouTube, welcome to another episode of Rants. This weekend I was doing some research for a blog post that I'm working on the price of housing. And the reason why I wanted to look into that is because if you look at the area that I'm in, and probably where you are as well, like builders have been throwing up houses like crazy. Like the acceleration of subdivisions that are being opened or expansion that's happening to existing subdivisions has really taken off. So I wanted to know why that is. The economy is doing better, but I don't think it's doing that much better. And then also, what's the price of housing? Like, how is that accelerating as well? So, based on what you could buy a house for 10 years ago or 5 years ago versus now what a house costs you now, what do those numbers look like? So, I did some research on this, and if you look at between 2013 to now, right? The price of a home has cost about $100,000 more on the median. So you figure that in 2013, around the summer of 2013, a home would cost you around $200,000. That was the median price in the United States. Now it's $300,000. So think about that. In the course of 5 years, which isn't that much time, the median price for a home has gone up like $100,000. And here's the interesting part. So you think 100 grand over 5 years, yeah, that's a lot. But the interesting point about this is that $30,000 of that 100,000 has happened in the last 8 months. So meaning, like right now, the median price of a home is 300 grand. In January, it was like 270. So not only is the rate of what you have to buy a home for increasing, but the rate at which it's increasing is also going up too, which is kind of interesting, right? So it's a little bit reminiscent of 2008. I don't think we're quite there yet, or that we're primed to have something like that happen again anytime soon. Because a lot of what happened in 2008 was in the financial crisis was largely due to investment houses and banks, committing fraud. Like they were securitizing loans and basically lying about the credit worthiness of the people that were behind the loans. So I don't think we're quite there, but with home ownership being such a core part of the American dream, you have to really be careful when you go out buying a home that the American dream doesn't turn into the American nightmare. You have to realize that when it comes to buying a home, there's a lot more involved with it than just the mortgage. Unless you're putting down 20%, you can have this thing called private mortgage insurance. You can have PMI, which is pretty much insurance that the lender makes you take out to protect their interests. Pretty much they're saying that if we're lending you the entire $300,000 and you're not putting any money down, you don't have a whole lot of skin in the game. There's nothing that really prevents you from walking away from the loan other than just ruining your credit. And for some people, they don't really care. So they make you buy this insurance, which in the case of you defaulting on the loan covers them. So that's a cost, and that can be, typically it's for a $300,000 home, $300,000 loan. Can't speak today for some reason. You're looking at $120 to $150 a month. So it's typically $50 or so for every $100,000. It that tapers off as the price of the loan goes up, but that's a good estimate, like $50 for every 100 grand borrowed. So that's a lot of money every year that you're pretty much just throwing away if you don't get PMI. So there's that. You have to make sure, if we're talking about guidelines for buying a home that are going to keep you out of trouble, putting down 20% is really important. Also counting all the additional costs. Remember, when you buy a house, the mortgage is just the tip of the iceberg. Depending on where you live, like if you buy a house in a nice neighborhood like a swim community or golfing community, there's going to be house association fees associated with that. That can be a couple $100s a month depending on where you live. The maintenance on nicer homes is a lot more. So when things break, it's going to cost more. Like if you have an air conditioning unit in a bigger house, when that breaks, I didn't say when it breaks, when it goes out, it's going to cost you more money. So you have to consider all that whenever you're in the market for a home. Probably the most not spoken about aspect of home buying that you really should consider is what I call like neighborhood influence, or other people call it like keeping up with the Joneses, right? So here's the thing: you buy a house in a nice community. Let's say you buy a home that's $300,000-$400,000, like around the national average, which to me is still a nice expensive home. At least in Georgia it is, right? So when you buy a house in a community like that, there are certain things that go along with that. Like, for most cases, people tend to take nicer care of their lawns, so you're going to be paying more for lawn care service. People may drive nicer cars, so you might feel influenced to, if you're not driving a nicer car, to upgrade your ride to to where you fit in. People have, parties or social gatherings, you're going to feel the need to reciprocate. And all these things cost money. All these things they are like a silent cost to living in certain neighborhoods that most people don't account for. So as a set of guidelines, I had to give you like, I guess, 3 major guidelines for buying a home that's going to keep you out of trouble. Because I mean, for people that already own a home, this is, you know, good advice for when you're buying your next home. One, put down 20%, because, you know, paying PMI is kind of silly. I mean, it's money that you literally are just throwing away every single month. There's no reason to do that. So if you know, even though it means renting for a little bit longer or staying in your current house a little bit longer, wait, save 20%. And put that down with a house, so you're not paying, you know, this essentially this tax in home ownership. Another one: don't buy at the top of the neighborhood. So this is an important one, and I think most realtors will probably tell you this too. So let's say your goal is to buy, your budget's like $500,000. The realtors will go high. You're going to buy like a $500,000 home, right? If your goal is to buy a $500,000 home, you want to buy that in a community where the the median price for a home in that community is around $500,000. You don't want to go into like a $300,000 community and then buy a home and spec it all up and add all these different features and things to where the price goes up to $500,000, because you're going to have a really difficult time selling it. Because you have to think about it, right? Whenever a prospective buyer, so you're going to sell your house, you know, 10 years from now, when someone comes into that neighborhood, they're looking for a house that's $300,000. If they're in the market for a $500,000 home, they're gonna go into a community where, you know, the lower end or the middle part of the home is $500,000 and then up. So it leaves you more space as far as you being able to sell the house and just not being you know, where you're gonna have trouble moving if you have to. Not buying at the top of your community, I think, is really good advice, and I think most realtors are going to tell you that. And then lastly, so we covered PMI, we covered not buying the top of a neighborhood, and then third, and this is something that some people may disagree with, but I think it's really good advice, is when you're structuring your mortgage, don't take out a loan that's more than 30% of your take-home pay, which sounds kind of conservative until you think about it. So let's say you earn a pretty good income. Say you earn you bring home $10,000 a month. We're going to use that figure just because it makes the math easy. So you don't want your mortgage. So your mortgage, PMI, you don't want your mortgage, insurance, and PMI, the things associated with just having the house, to be more than 30% of your take home. So in this case, no more than $3,000. And here's why. Whenever you put a lot more money into a house, so you go out and you buy like the price of the mortgage represents a larger part of your take home pay, you're not leaving much margin in your life. It's much harder for you to invest. It's much harder for you to, you know, take vacations and furnish the house and do all the things that you want to do. So it's good because a house is such a long-term, for most people anyway, it's such a long-term expense. You want to minimize that as much as possible. So you want to buy something nice, right, that you're going to feel happy with, but at the same time, you don't want to buy too much house, because you end up being what people call house poor, right? You have all your money tied up in something that's really it's certainly not an asset. I mean, it's not a bad place to put money, but it's not an asset. I mean, you figure a house doesn't pay you if anything, they cost you money. You got to pay taxes on them, you got to insure them, you got to fix things when they break. So a house is a money sink. I mean, it is better than renting long term as a place to put money, but it's certainly not an investment in the traditional sense, or at least how I qualify an investment anyway. So that's pretty much all I had. I also have a blog post that talks a little more in depth about this. I talk about other things like maintenance costs and, you know, some breakdowns on taxes and what you're going to expect to pay for taxes. But I don't want to make this video too long for you guys. But if you're interested in this and you found this useful, check in the description. And also at the end of this video, there'll be an annotation. It'll probably be right here. That's going to point you to my blog. The article that I'm working on that ties in with this video kind of expands on it a little bit more. So hope you guys found this useful. Please like, subscribe, comment, share this with friends. And thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.